welcome to the first of 4 candidate forums for the International Executive Board and Tribunal. I will be moderating the first portion of tonight's forum, which is for international justice. And if you haven't met me yet, but seeing by the waiting room, I know everybody. I'm Andrew Sagan. I've been with the fraternity for just over 25 years, and been a pleasure to serve the fraternity as well as serve as moderator for the international justice portion of the forum. Again, this candidate forum will include the candidates for the position of international justice and international vice justice. We will begin with the candidates for the IJ position and conclude with the candidates for the IVJ position. Once we finish the section of the candidate forum dedicated to the IJ position, those candidates are free to leave the forum, or they can stay around and listen to what's going on with the IVJ positions as well. We ask that candidates keep their cameras off unless we are addressing their position, so our attendees can focus on the candidates and our questions as me moderating the discussion. As a reminder, this candidate forum is being recorded, and the recording will be available to all members on the convention landing page once we get that all set up in the next coming days. Now, a few ground rules before we begin. We have allotted 40 minutes for tonight's portion for the IJ candidate forum. Today, we will have participating is John Karasik and Nicole Winget. Thank you for both joining us. Each candidate will have no more than 2 minutes to make an opening remarks. And if a candidate exceeds their time, their microphone will be muted. I will then ask the candidates a series of prepared questions, which have not been provided to anybody ahead of time. And each candidate will have no more than 2 minutes to address those questions as well. And you guessed it, if a candidate exceeds their time, they will be muted as well. If time permits, and following those questions, I will be asking the questions posed by attendees in the Q&A section of Zoom. And those candidates will have 2 minutes as well to answer those questions. And of course, each candidate that exceeds their time, they will be muted. I don't say that very often, but I'm going to say it again one more time. And following the Q&A section, each candidate will be giving no more than 3 minutes to make any closing remarks they want. And if they exceed that time, their microphones will also be muted as well. So their microphones will be muted probably sometime. I would like to begin with some opening remarks from the candidates. First, we will be hear from John Karasik. John, the floor is yours. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, everyone. Or thank you, Andrew. Good evening, everyone. I'm John Karasik. I'm your incumbent international treasurer. Our nominations committee has slated me as their choice to be the next international justice of PAD, and I'm seeking your support for that position. I'm seeking the office of IJ based on my experience and my track record of success. I've served PAD as an alumni chapter officer, associate tribune, board member at large, and as international treasurer. And I've chaired our executive committee, our audit committee, and the committee that reorganized and clarified our governing documents. The office of IJ has 2 equally important roles. First, to be the chair of our corporate board of directors and ensure that the business of PAD is attended to. And second, to be the leading advocate for the fraternal spirit of PAD, ensuring that we grow in our core values so that our members enjoy a lifetime of honorable service. In the first role, I'll focus on executing our strategic plan, the plan that our entire IEB has worked very hard on developing. To execute this plan, we will need the engagement and passion of members throughout the fraternity. That takes me to the second role. Building communities, building consensus, building a sense of common purpose in our diverse organization. These are the things that I do best. Within PAD, within the Department of the Navy, and across the Department of Defense throughout my career, I've demonstrated those skills. For these reasons, because I understand these 2 roles, I am the candidate to be the next IJ of PAD, and I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, John. Next, we will hear from Nicole Winget. Nicole, it's all yours.
Good evening or afternoon, everyone. Nicole Winget here, and I am seeking your support as international justice for the upcoming biennium because I am the leader that Phi Alpha Delta needs for what is going to be a challenging upcoming 2 years, both for our nation and for the fraternity. And I believe I am this leader because of my demonstrated leadership and work that I've done for the fraternity and outside the fraternity. Whether it's been my role as executive officer in the United States Navy, sitting on multiple different boards of directors, including the chair of Council of College and Military Educators, or as Dean of Adult and Online Education at Campbell University. I have been selected for these roles because I demonstrate more than just words. I demonstrate through actions. I have shown I know how to build, motivate, and sustain effective teams who enjoy a sense of accomplishment, and I always strive to lead from the front while doing the hard work with the team. My crowning example comes from the last 2 years of the biennium, and that was spearheading the design and passing of our strategic plan, the implementation of which will be the focus of the upcoming biennium. My goal is to bring all parties to the table to make efforts to live out our core values while adapting to the changes of the world. I have the experiences that can connect with every member, whether that be pre-law, auxiliary, law, or alumni. And these connections can help us bond as siblings and fraternally lead in improving our profession. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Now we will move on to the question and answer portion of the forum. I'll be asking each candidate the same questions. So to give each candidate a chance to answer first or second, in the case may be, I'll be rotating the order in which we go. So first, we're going to start with Nicole Winget. Nicole, how would you describe your leadership style, and how does it make you the best choice for the position of international justice?
Thank you. Strong but collaborative. I have had to lead teams through very challenging situations, as well as very joyous situations. In higher ed right now, there are enrollment issues. So being able to motivate my team at Campbell, I've had to balance bringing out their work effort and bringing out that teamwork while still getting the job done every day. However, I strongly believe you cannot be a team of one, and the leader has to be a part of the team. So that's where the collaboration comes in. There is absolutely no way that everybody can agree with every decision that's made. It's just not physically possible. But you do need to search not for consensus, but for understanding. Your team, the people on your team, no matter whether that team is 10 people or 300,000 people, have to feel like they have a voice. They have to be heard, and they have to have input when they are willing and able to. So again, decisive. I know how to lead. I know how to make tough decisions, but I strongly believe in collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. And John, how about you? I'll ask you the question again so you can hear it. How would you describe your leadership style, and how does it make you the best choice for the position of international justice? John.
Thanks, Andrew. I start with collaboration. I start with consensus building. I start with the idea that every one of our members, everyone who's giving their time to this organization is, a participant in shaping our future and shaping our destiny. So I start with the idea that every one of them needs to be heard from the beginning, from the outset. Their ideas need to be addressed. Their concerns need to be taken on board. Their creativity needs to be elevated and captured. And, by doing that, we can come up with ideas, solutions, programs, policies that are far better than any small group of us could ever hope to achieve. Within that framework of building consensus, I'm also a proponent of giving flexibility to people and giving people the autonomy that they need to try to experiment. I'm a believer in authorizing risk-taking, in giving people the space to try things and perhaps fail. And out of failure, or out of the ability to try something and possibly not succeeding, we have the ability to innovate. We have the ability to try new things. That's the style of leadership that I've advocated for and embodied throughout my entire professional career. That's what I'll do as international justice.
Excellent. Thank you, John. Okay, for our next question, we'll go to you, John. You're going to be continue speaking there. What role should the International Executive Board play as it relates to Phi Alpha Delta as a whole?
The thing about our board is that it can't operate in a vacuum. What we have to do as board members is, first of all, recognize that each one of us, all 9 of the board members, have a co-equal voice and role in shaping the destiny of PAD. Every one of us has the same duty of care, the same duty of loyalty, the same rights to information. We, as 9 members of a board, have to be able to work together to reach solutions, but we absolutely can't do that in a vacuum. So we have to not just solicit and allow for member input and engagement in what we're doing. We have to reach out and bring them into what we're doing and make sure that from the very beginning, the things that our members are seeing, whether they're part of one of our councils or committees or just members who have experience in an area, that they have an opportunity to share with us their ideas, their ability to spot risks that we might otherwise overlook, their ability to improve upon something that we're already working on. We have to recognize that the 9 members of our board are there to be teammates with the membership as a whole.
Thank you, John. All right, Nicole, we're going to ask you the same question. I'll repeat it. What role should the International Executive Board play as it relates to Phi Alpha Delta as a whole?
First off, I'm going to do this. I can't believe I am. John, I agree with everything, the spirit of what you're saying. I do believe the board, absolutely. We are a board of 9, and we need to bring people to the table, be transparent, all of that. However, we do have to also look at the business side of what we do. We have legal obligations to hold the fraternity in a position where it thrives under our leadership, but set it up so that it can thrive 5, 10, 50 years from now. So the additional role of the board is to hear all the feedback that we get, bring all the people that we can to the table, but we have to make the decisions that are based on things that we are legally and I would argue morally responsible for guiding. So while I agree with John completely about teamwork and hearing our members, we also have to keep very near and dear to our heart that we are, to use the Navy expression, or use a Navy expression, steering the ship of the fraternity. And we have to be able to see past the now and set the fraternity up for now, 5 years, 10 years, 50 years down the road. I, again, strongly agree with John, but don't forget the business side of what we have to do.
Thank you, Nicole. All right. Next question. This will go to you, Nicole Winget. The International Justice needs to steer and lead the board to ensure that projects get done and their goals and objectives are met. In a lot of ways, the IJ serves as a project manager. Tell us about one project that you ran point on or led during your time as a member or officer of the executive board that highlights your project management skills.
I'm going to use the strategic plan again. I know I mentioned it in my opening statement. I was the chair of that committee. It was an epic committee, so I take none of the overall, well, I take a little bit of the overall credit. But that to me is the biggest project and the most impactful project that I've worked on as a member of the board. We had a small but mighty team. So as project manager, it was my responsibility to set our guidelines. And I, very similar to what John expressed, do believe in giving people right lanes and left lanes and then letting them drive through those lanes however they see fit. It's your job as the project manager to help people know what direction we're going, but give them the freedom to navigate that direction as they see fit. So I had a wonderful experience working with that group. We utilized tech tools, Slack, Google, all the work side stuff that has to be done. But probably more importantly were the hours that were spent collaborating, sharing ideas, and reading and researching what was important to the fraternity, and then putting that into a usable document that the board could then both review and now hopefully execute. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole. Same question, John. I'll repeat it. That was a mouthful there. The International Justice needs to steer and lead the board to ensure that projects get done and their goals or objectives are met. In a lot of ways, the IJ serves as a project manager. Tell us about one project that you ran point on or led during your time or as a member or officer of the executive board that highlights your project management skills. John.
Thanks, Andrew. As you know, I was the project leader for the project that reorganized, drafted many of the sections of, clarified, and in the case of our awards manual, created anew all of our governing documents. So there was a lot of work that team did over the course of a year and a half. It was a major effort. There were a lot of people who put a lot of work into it. We met bi-weekly for months and months and months and months. We had homework to do between meetings to make sure that we were all prepped to dive into the next session. And about midway through, I realized in looking at the calendar that we were slipping behind our schedule. We weren't going to make our deadline. So I talked with a couple of the members of the team, and we figured out a way of correcting how we were going about handling our workload. We found out more efficient ways of doing the work of that committee. And in the end, we were able to complete our work, provide our deliverables on time in a manner that the board was able to act on. And that's something that I'm especially proud of.
Excellent. Thank you, John. Let's start off with another question about strategic planning. We've been talking about a little bit tonight. What is your plan, John Karasik? You can start to continue implementing the 5-year strategic plan that the 2022-2024 International Executive Board approved in August?
Sure. So within the scope of our strategic plan, as you look through it, you'll see that there's a lot of detail that still needs to be fleshed out. There's places where we need to do research and analysis. There's places where we'll have to make decisions. So there's metrics that we have to establish. So there's a lot of things yet to be done in creating a complete plan that we'll be able to act on. So part of the job of the next 2 years, and part of my job, will be to continue drilling down and fleshing that out. But in terms of the 4 focus areas, I do believe that the third focus area, communications, is one where we can move out fast and get some early wins, because there's ways that we can improve our communications between our members and our board, the board and our members, and between members, peer-to-peer, horizontal communications. That's an area where I'm looking for some early successes. Beyond that, the area where I think we need to have the greatest intensity over the next 2 years is with our membership. And there are ways that we can do that. There are ways that we can smooth the transition, for example, between pre-law membership and law school membership. That's an idea that one of our International Advisory Board members proposed to me, and I thought it was a brilliant idea. That's the area where I think we have the greatest need right now, because we're seeing law school enrollments dropping, because we're seeing fewer and fewer members. becoming engaged at the law school level, that's an area where we have an opportunity to make a big impact. So that's the area where I think I'll have the greatest intensity of focus over the next 2 years. That's the second of the focus areas.
Great. Thank you, John. And Nicole, let me ask that question again. What is your plan to continue implementing the 5-year strategic plan that the board has approved in August of 2023?
Thank you. The plan was very specifically and with very deliberate intent. Almost every, if not every section, has an element of researching how we do it, how other organizations that are similar to us, not necessarily identical to us, and how other competing organizations do certain things. Along with that, it has specific data collection from members, bringing members to the table, having focus groups, all that kind of stuff to get input from the members. And that was done on purpose so that people can have the voice that we've been talking about, can have a seat at the table. So my very first step will be to look and rack and stack the timeline that was agreed to by the IEB, make sure it still makes sense with the new IEB, and then seek out and appoint volunteers who want to take point in that, giving them, again, their right lane and their left lane and saying, hey, this is what we need to accomplish, go. So that's going to give us an opportunity to really take a look at how we do things and how other organizations do things, as well as bring hopefully new people to the table. But for our longtime volunteers, of course, join us as well. But hopefully we'll spark some new interest and get new people to the table, so that more and more members feel that they have that key volunteer spirit, that they're not, quote unquote, just a member, that we are bringing them to the table and we're giving them actionable tasks to do. And of course, that's an investigative type step. They will be responsible for reporting back to the board. And then the hope is that we continue to engage them in executing what we have come up with. We have to figure out what we're doing and what needs to be done before we start pulling out on action. So step one will be getting the data, setting the plan, and then executing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. And while you're unmuted, we're going to continue with you. What other nonprofit or other board experience do you have outside of Phi Alpha Delta that will assist you in meeting the demands of the international justice position?
The three big ones I can think of are President of the Council of College and Military Educators. That is a national organization made up of Department of Defense, Department of Education, military educators, businesses. So the president, I was actually chair of public affairs and then the president of the organization. So again, the chair of a national board of directors. I have also sat as the chair of the Military Affairs Council, which is a chamber, Fayetteville, North Carolina chamber organization that's tasked with bridging the gap between civilians and military members. And for those of you who have a foot in both of those worlds, you know it can be challenging to have one conversation with pure civilians and military members. So that's given me a lot of experience in bridging gaps in communications. And then last but not least, I am the Vice President of Communications for the national organization Operation Enduring Warrior. We serve military, LEO, and fire. I've been a volunteer with them since about 2015 when I came home from my last tour. And I have been involved with them and the VP of Communications with them. And that's really, I think, going to help because of my experience with communications, both across social media, with sponsors, with setting up events. So again, bringing some more direct board experience at the national level, but beyond just the sitting on a board, active, engaged, executing tasks on those boards. So those would be the three that I can think of that have the biggest swath that would impact my ability to be a strong leader with the Phi Alpha Delta board.
Thanks, Nicole. And how about you, John? What other nonprofit or other board experiences do you have outside of Phi Alpha Delta that will assist you in meeting the demands of the international justice position?
Absolutely, sure. So I was president of the Government Intellectual Property Law Association for a term. And in that capacity, my role was to lead the organization in developing programming, educational events for our membership. It was a relatively small organization, but it was something that we were very proud of, the programming that we were able to develop for attorneys who are within the federal government practicing intellectual property law. On a larger scale, I was a member of the chemical practice group of the American Intellectual Property Law Association. That's the all-encompassing legal organization for intellectual property law across the country. And I was a co-chair of the chemical practice group. And in that role, our focus was on member education, developing training forums and tools, and producing materials for our membership who are practicing in the chemical arts. For those of you who don't know, intellectual property law is highly specialized within that area. And so you have people who practice specifically in chemical practice, electrical practice, and so on. And my focus as an IP attorney was in chemical practice. I was the co-chair of that subcommittee of the chemical practice team. Beyond that, I'm a general partner in a business that I own with members of my family. We owned a hotel in Florida for a number of years and operated that. And in that capacity, I had to learn how to make sure that we were making payroll, that we were keeping up with all of our licensures and insurances, that the property was being maintained. It was a lot of work. It was very challenging, but in that capacity, I learned a lot of very hands-on information about how to run an organization, a small organization, as it were. But we managed to run a hotel in South Florida for a number of years, and it was a challenge, but it was a lot of fun, and I learned a lot from it.
Thank you, John. And we have actually a question from the Q&A section from a member. We'll start with you, John. How will you balance your other professional and volunteer commitments with the rigors of being IJ?
So I'm pretty fortunate in that regard. I'm the head of my practice group at the Office of Naval Research, which means that I've got a team of people practicing, trademark law, IP litigation, patent secrecy matters. I have a team that works for me that is running the day-to-day operations of Department of the Navy intellectual property law. So I have a lot of flexibility in that regard. And as a government attorney who's been working with the government for quite a few years, I get a lot of annual leave. I get a lot of time off. I, have a flexible schedule that allows me to take every other Monday off. So I'm very fortunate in that regard, in that I really do have the flexibility to spend as much time as necessary in the role of IJ. I don't think everyone else in their career has that flexibility that I'm fortunate enough to have.
Excellent. And Nicole, how will you balance your other professional and volunteer commitments with the rigors of being IJ?
I count my blessings because I have a similar ability as John does. My work is incredibly flexible. I work the bulk from home, and our rule is as long as you're getting your work done, do it when you want to do it. But really, it's not just that. It's because it's my ability to have high levels of organization and high levels of enthusiasm is how I would manage the role as IJ. I'm going to share a little tip with you all. I use a website called reclaim.ai. You put in all your tasks for the day and it AI schedules you your day. It's amazing. I highly recommend it. I'm a task organizer, mildly obsessed. In fact, there's a little joke with some of my friends. I literally schedule my sleep into my calendar so that I make sure I accomplish everything every day. I understand that sounds a little obsessive, but because I am so organized, I am able to tackle everything that's thrown my way. I believe in respecting everyone's time, making sure that we're scheduling meetings at times that work for the most amount of people. I very much believe in reaching out and scheduling times to talk and get things on the schedule because people's lives are crazy. Stuff happens. So through that organization, through my system of engaging, that is how I would stay on top of things, make sure that I engage. But again, I will point out my job is incredibly flexible. And I usually get my Campbell work done between 4 a.m. and 7 a.m. so that I have the rest of the day open. But I'm very lucky in that point. But so organization and then enthusiasm. The work I do for Phi Alpha Delta gives me a level of energy that keeps me going. It gets me excited. It makes me want to get up and do things and talk to our members and meet and work on things like the strategic plan. So of course you need that organization so that you can get all the tasks done, but you're driven by enthusiasm. And that is how I would embrace the role of IJ. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we have one more question to ask before we go into closing remarks. I'll ask you, Nicole, what are the top 3 things that you will champion over the next 2 years if you're elected our next IJ?
That is a great question. And I'm going to start with the strategic plan again, because that is, it's a huge thing. And there's a lot of little things in the strategic plan that I want to champion. But executing that strategic plan is top of the list. Lots of things fall under that. So I'm going to cheat a little bit and say strategic plan. And we do need to improve communication with our members. I think everybody can agree with that. I don't know the answer to that yet. There's a lot of options out there, social media, websites, email communications. We have to be looking at how our members want to be communicated with. One example I've spoken to a few members about is the ability to text. We use that with my students all the time and they love it. So looking at new and creative ways to communicate with our members, how they want to be communicated with, not necessarily how we think they want to be communicated with. So number 1, strategic plan. Number 2, improving communications. And number 3, getting back to having those sibling bonds that I think were incredibly strong leading up to COVID, and we lost a lot of that during COVID. It's just the nature. And I will tell you, it's not only Phi Alpha Delta. I'm betting everybody on this call can think of at least one organization where engagement became hard post-COVID, and we're not really out of that. So finding new ways or expanding on things that have been started. For example, the IJ office hours, hosting those consistently, so that we can continue to establish those sibling and fraternal bonds and work those bonds in a manner that will improve our legal profession. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Same question for you, John, and I'll say it again so you have it fresh in your mind. What are the top 3 things that you will champion over the next 2 years if you are elected IJ?
There we go. Shockingly, I'm also going to mention communication, but I think of communication in slightly different terms. I believe that as valuable as it is for our members to be able to communicate with us, and it is, and for us to be, as members of the board, to be able to communicate with our members, and it is, more important than either of those is building a framework where our members and our chapters are able to communicate with each other. I firmly believe that horizontal, peer-to-peer communications are far more effective in building enthusiasm and engagement in an organization than directive and what I call vertical communications. I believe that if we give our members more opportunities to share with each other, that does a couple of things. That allows them to take pride in what they're doing, and it gives everyone else the seeds of ideas. Second, building on our members' engagement, and that starts with giving them room to maneuver, giving them the freedom to innovate, giving them the freedom to try things that they believe will work in their district, for their chapter. We have to enable and encourage flexibility and risk-taking, because without that, we don't get the ability to innovate. And without innovation, we stagnate. Third thing, convention. There's an opportunity for us not to go back to where we're redrafting documents on the convention floor, but there's an opportunity for us to create an environment where our delegates to convention actually will have opportunities to give us real feedback on what they think will be the important things for us to do over the next 2 years, and to lay out what they think the board should work on and a reasonable time frame for us to do it. And that will give our members who come to convention, our delegates there, a real sense of ownership in the fraternity.
Thank
And
you, John. We just hit that 2-minute mark, so thank you. Didn't mean to cut you off,
that's okay.
but we talked about the rules. All right, well, we're going to move on to our closing remarks. And I would like to start. You have 3 minutes, and John Karasik, you can go up first. Go for it.
Thank you. As I speak with our members, I hear what they're looking to our IJ to provide. They're looking for a sense that their voices matter, a sense that wherever their background is, wherever they come from, they belong with PAD, and PAD is there to uplift and celebrate them. And most of all, they're looking to be part of a team working together to a common goal. And I believe in building teams through engaging with the full diverse range of our community, through listening intentionally to that diverse membership, and through building a culture of trust that empowers risk-taking and innovation. These are the tools that I'll use to build energy and enthusiasm throughout PAD. I've done this throughout my career. I'll do this again as IJ, so that whatever we do over the next 2 years, we'll be doing it together. That idea of togetherness and inclusion is going to be my North Star for the next 2 years, because all of us are smarter than any one of us. All of us contribute more than any one of us, and each of us has value. Thank you all for your time tonight. Have a great evening.
And thank you, John. And Nicole, your closing remarks. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. And again, thank you to everyone for attending. It is great to see the list of names, and I love to see the engagement. It gives me a little warm fuzzy. I appreciate everyone's time and listening to John and I discuss some of our ideas. I again echo the fact that our members are the core of what we do, and it is our mission and responsibility as the board of directors to steer the fraternity in a manner that makes it sustainable for the next 5, 10, 50 years. And I am the best positioned to do that. I am a strong communicator, a compassionate leader, and a very enthusiastic member of the fraternity. My leadership skills, my ability to build teams has been proven up and down the chain of Phi Alpha Delta as a chapter justice, a district justice, and an IEB member. I have tangible and executable ideas, which all tie back to the strategic plan, that will help our current members, help recruit new members, and help put us in a position that we will remain and grow as the best fraternity that this nation has to offer. I would appreciate your support, and thank you very much for your time. Have a great evening.
Thank you so much, Nicole. And thank you, John, for a great Very informative and fraternal forum. We got to learn a lot today. We did have a comment in the question and answer that I like to address, and I think it's a great idea since we have been talking about the strategic plan a lot to link the description into our YouTube videos for this forum. I think it's a great idea, and we're going to do that. So thank you for the idea ahead of time. We will be sure to execute that. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Nicole M. Gritta, International Justice, who will be taking over the next portion of the forum for International Vice Justice. Nicole.
Good evening, brothers, sisters, and siblings. I'm happy to be here with you today. Give us just a few minutes while we bring our International Vice Justice candidates to the forefront. Jen, Connie, if you're there, if you could go ahead and turn your cameras on. And thanks, Andrew, Nicole, and John for turning yours off. So I know y'all were here for the beginning, but just want to go over the ground rules once again in case anyone has joined us since Andrew read those at the start. But for those who are just now joining us or didn't hear this disclaimer, this candidate forum is being recorded, and the recording will be available to all members on the convention landing page in the coming weeks. Each candidate will have no more than 2 minutes to make some opening remarks. If a candidate exceeds their time, I will respectfully mute their mic by saying your time has ended. After that, we will provide them with some questions that have been prepared ahead of time, none of which have been shared with the candidates before this evening. Again, they will have 2 minutes to answer each question, and I will alternate between candidates when asking them. And then finally, if there is any time permitting, we will take questions from the attendees. If you could put those in the Q&A feature of the Zoom platform, we will look for them there as time permits. And then at the end, we will allow 3 minutes, up to 3 minutes, for the candidates to make any closing remarks that they would like to make. And with that said, let me make sure our settings are looking good. And we'll go ahead and get started. So the first question, Jen, I'll pose this one to you first. How would you describe your leadership style?
I thought we were going to do opening statements. Sorry.
This is what it's all about, y'all. We're live. Now, Jen, I will give you your 2 minutes to make your opening statement starting now.
Thank you. Good evening, brothers, sisters, and siblings. My name is Jen Schroeder, and I am the member who your nominations committee slated to be your next International Vice Justice. I wanted to thank the nominations committee for all of their hard work, and I ask that you take this time to listen as well. I am a person who likes to make my actions speak louder than my words. So a little bit about me, history. I have served on various levels of membership and leadership throughout this fraternity, starting as a pre-law member, as a committee chair, a law chapter officer, alumni officer, pre-law alumni advisor, district justice, district liaison, international secretary, and international board member at large. I have chartered 2 separate alumni chapters, so and both of those chapters have won various awards throughout their time. I work very hard for this fraternity, and I, like to meet people and meet other members and grow this fraternity and move this fraternity forward. My vision for this fraternity is to focus on fraternalism and law chapter operations. I like to focus on those in order to promote fraternalism, just to say that fraternalism and business are not mutually exclusive. And I think that that is something we need to remember as we move this fraternity forward in the next 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. All right. Connie, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Madam IJ. Ja, at Connie Sosi Taharo Yanish, Tabahan Nashno touching Bashichin, Honati Dashache, Dotabaha Dashanale, Robert E. Reading Alumni Chapter, Shinashat, Okut Ego, Danetasan Nishle. Hello, everyone. My name's Connie Sosi Taharo. I just introduced myself in Navajo, so that means that I am a Native American. And how I introduce myself, I introduce my 4 clans, which are Water's Edge, Red Running Into the Water, One Who Walks Around You, and also Water's Edge. I said that I'm currently coming from the Robert E. Redding Alumni Chapter, and also this makes me a Navajo woman. Thank you to everyone joining us tonight at the beginning of the week. Your presence demonstrates your passion and dedication to Phi Alpha Delta. It's your passion and dedication to our fraternity that fuels my desire to run for International Vice Justice. It is fitting that the convention theme is moving forward together, the very essence of fraternalism. Part of moving forward together is ensuring we are including our core values in our work on the International Executive Board. Moving forward together means continuing our service to the legal profession from backpack to briefcase by using innovative ideas from our members to demonstrate how we can support our membership. Moving forward together means maintaining our integrity by coming to terms with our history and guaranteeing our leadership is reflective of our diverse membership. Moving forward together means having compassion and supporting each other when we stumble. If I am your International Vice Justice, I want to help us move forward together. Thank you.
Thank you, Connie. I just would like to comment that you both were under time, which you all know I appreciate. So thank you for being mindful of our time this evening. All right, so moving on to the first question, which I tried to ask prematurely. But Connie, I'm going to come to you first this time. And the question is, how would you describe your leadership style and how will it support you in assisting the International Justice if you are to be elected the International Vice Justice?
Thank you so much for the question. I would describe my leadership style as collaborative. A lot of my past experience is working in Congress. As you can imagine, trying to get anything passed into law definitely requires a lot of collaboration, a lot of long hours, and a lot of hard work and dedication to making sure that we get those things taken care of. My collaborative work style has definitely worked not only in Congress, but it's also worked in my current job at the Department of Interior, where we also have to work with other federal agencies to get clearance on various items, such as testimony for in front of Congress, or even just getting technical assistance on bills. I am more than experienced on working with many different types of people in many different capacities and making sure that when we present a product, that it is a combination of all of our hard work and that we are all in a good agreeing space. I have also done that on an International Executive Board. There have been many instances where we have had some some not so friendly discussions about various things. However, one of the important things that I have taken a lot of time to remind all of us on the International Executive Board is that we are here on behalf of you, that we are here to serve our membership and to make sure that we are doing the best that we can to move our fraternity forward together. And that is something that I think that I would love to continue bringing to the International Executive Board and also helping the international justice.
Thank you, Sister Connie. Jen, same question. How would you describe your leadership style and how will it support you? How will it assist you in supporting the international justice if you were to be elected International Vice Justice?
Thank you. So I practice servant leadership. I believe in integrity and strong communication above anything else. I think it is important to empower our members and make sure that our members, our key volunteers, are recognized and are given the tools they need to succeed. First and foremost, I consider myself a member of PAD, just like all of us. I hear a lot of they and our, and we are all members, so I try to use the word we. I think it's important to recognize that we all have a work, life, and PAD balance. So compassion is another part of servant leadership. That's how I would describe my leadership style. I have used that leadership style in the past, not only in PAD as a member of law chapter boards and as a member of the IEP, but also in my professional life. I think that it will support the IJ upcoming because I do have strong communication skills. I am very efficient. If you know me, I don't like to mess around and waste time at all. I am efficient and effective. I believe in tasks list. As a member of the IEB previously, when I was secretary, I assisted in compiling task lists and along with not only the minutes, but also all of the votes and various task lists for the IJ, for the IVJ, and also for various board members and committees. I will continue to do that, and I can continue to do that going into this biennium.
Thank you, Jen. All right, next question. This one will go to Jen first. What do you see as the most important role the International Vice Justice plays on the International Executive Board?
I think first and foremost, I think that the International Vice Justice needs to support the international justice. That's a big part of it, but I think it's not necessarily agreeing just to agree. It's important to make sure people's voices are heard, because I know as a member of the board, there have been various leadership styles, and I think it's important to make sure that the international justice is taking time to listen to not only the members of the board, but also the members of the fraternity as a whole. I think it's also as a check. Unfortunately, I think Connie might have alluded a little to this. There have been very vibrant discussions among board members, and I think it's important to make sure that all the groups are recognized and heard, and no matter what sort of marginalized group that members of the fraternity may come from, it's important to understand we have a very diverse membership and not everybody is going to agree. So I think it's my job to make sure that all the voices are heard and the intersectionality of those marginalized groups is heard to the international justice as well as the board.
Thank you, Jen. Connie, same question. What do you see as the most important role the International Vice Justice plays on the International Executive Board?
Thank you. I think first and foremost, the International Vice Justice serves as an advisor to our international justice. And the role of an advisor is somebody who, like Jen has talked about, is someone who provides information, as someone who gives advice, as somebody who makes sure that the international justice is taking consideration of everybody's point of view. That's something that I have talked a lot about in serving on the International Executive Board, is making sure that everyone's voices are heard, because it's so important to make sure that we are listening to all of our members, because it's not just our own priorities that matter in this fraternity. It's the entire membership. They are the reason why we are here, and they are the reason why our fraternity still exists. And like Jen said, we are all members, and it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we are continuing to support each other, not just in the past bienniums, but moving forward into the future, which is a great segue back into the convention theme of moving forward together. So even in being an international vice justice, serving as an advisor, and even as a listening ear to the international justice is what I think the most important part of the role is.
Thank you, Connie. Thank you, Jen. So I have a brief follow-up question. Having served in the role of international justice now for almost 2 years, I can appreciate what both of you said. Can you give me a concrete example of how you would put that most important role that you just described into action if you are elected as the IVJ? And Jen, I'll come to you again first.
So I think that a concrete example would be if there is a specific methodology that the IJ is using, and I'm just going to say an example. So Sister Nicole, just because you're IJ, I'm going to use your name as an example. We come from very different backgrounds, and both professionally and personally. I think that is important, that if there's something, for example, you put forth, hey, I want this particular vote or motion to be passed. And I say, look, but that might not be great. We're not looking at it from all of the angles. What about this person who doesn't have access or doesn't have the technological wherewithal to submit member comments via the Google online forms? What if they email them to you? What if they call you? What if they text you? I think that that is a concrete example of making sure that the IJ understands that it can't just be one funnel version of how to get information or comments from our members, that maybe it's intended to allow everybody access to make those comments. But if somebody doesn't have technology wherewithal or the ability to do it that way, they should still be heard.
Thank you, Jen. Connie, same question. What would be a concrete example of how you would be able to leverage that most important role you described if you were the IVJ?
So I think that I feel like I have been fortunate enough in my time on the International Executive Board of where I've been able to serve in that role in a very different ways with different IJs. One good example would be when it comes to having hard political discussions. That's something that has definitely come up to issue with not only just this recent executive board, but even the past ones. And because given the nature of my job, having those difficult political discussions is an everyday reality for me. And there have been times where I have talked with IJs about why it is important that if we put out something, that we need to make sure that we are including other points of view. And that if we are going to put out something that is related to quote unquote political in nature, that we need to make sure that we are issuing a strong and united statement that is going to be an accurate reflection of our membership. And I think that I have done that on numerous occasions. And whether or not I've been successful, I think history will tell me that, or maybe some very angry people will tell me afterwards, who knows? But I think that I have definitely done that time and time again. And I am ready to have the title of International Vice Justice to do it in a more official capacity.
Thank you, Connie. So I know we've talked a lot this evening about the strategic plan. You have both served on the current board of directors. So we've spent a lot of the past biennium talking about the strategic plan. But my question is, how will you support the IJ with continued implementation of the 5-year strategic plan that the board approved last August? And Connie, I'll start with you on this question.
I think the first step is going to make sure that we get all those relevant committees formed right away. It kind of reminds me of how I've often thought about, I'm sure some people have had this thought of like, if I were president, what are the first things that I would do? And for me, I've thought about this, not president of the United States, president of my tribe, where I would fill my cabinet first thing and make sure that all the relevant committees are going to be appropriately staffed so we can hit the ground running. And that translates very well into helping the IJ implement the strategic plan. Within those first couple of months, we need to make sure that we have people in place who are willing to hit the ground running and get these various things taken care of. And then at the end, making sure that we are going to be ready to take the next steps, because a lot of those reports in the strategic plan are going to be due during the 2024-2026 biennium. And we want to make sure that we have people ready and in place to not only be able to review, but also look at how we can implement the recommendations within those reports so we can continue moving the fraternity forward.
Thank you, Sister Connie. Sister Jen, same question. How will you support the IJ with implementing the 5-year strategic plan that was approved last August?
Thank you. I would help support the strategic plan and help the IJ by making sure, again, we are breaking down barriers that have been put in place. I am very much a substance over procedure person. So I don't like a lot of red tape. I don't think that it's necessary. I think that we need to really engage our key volunteers and thank them for the work that they have done. Again, I submit that as a former DJ, there was a lot of red tape that was put in place this past biennium. And I think some of those key volunteers have stepped away. And I think it's important to talk to those people and make sure that they are engaged and have that buy-in. And as Connie said, fill some of those committees. For example, the communication and engagement. I know there are some Q4 2024 goals to have committees filled, but we're not going to fill them with people unless we really look to our key volunteers and membership and thank those people for their work and break down the barriers that prevent them from volunteering. I think that we all have a PAD work-life balance, and it needs to be recognized and appreciated. And we could really go far as long as we make sure our key volunteers know that they are appreciated and ask them. You don't get the people to volunteer unless you reach out and ask.
So that raises a good follow-up question about key volunteers in general. We use this term a lot, but how would you, if elected International Vice Justice, reach more members so that we're not calling on the same folks time and time again to support the initiatives that we have in place? Connie, I'll come to you first on this one, since it's a follow-up.
So I think it's something that Jen and I have been talking about, which is talking to people. And that's something that we definitely need to do more of, which is reaching out on an individual basis to all of our members and taking the time to get to know them, to understand what drives their passion, what makes them excited to be a member of Phi Alpha Delta. And through that, we will be able to figure out how can we make sure that you will feel like you are contributing to the future of this fraternity. And through those conversations is how we can find new leaders and making sure that the fraternity will continue forward.
Thank you, Connie. Jen, same question to you. How will you reach out to more members so that we engage more people in volunteering to support the various initiatives?
Sure. I think that it's true. We do need to reach out individually, but again, I think that's part of servant leadership is empowering our members. I am not a micromanager. I think that everybody has a different perspective, and we are all here to see us succeed. We are all here for Phi Alpha Delta with the same goal. Even though we might take different paths or disagree on the paths to get to that goal, I think it's important. They're not our kids. They're not somebody who are boss. Again, we are all members, but we have different roles within the fraternity. So as a district justice, you might be a key volunteer, but you are equally as important as a board member at large. You just have different roles assigned to you. And I think that's important to empower our volunteers, give them the tools they need to succeed. And again, make sure that these people know that they're appreciated. A lot of people, like I said, have stepped away from the fraternity. And, I just hope that we can bring some of those people back and individual reach out, talk to people. And it's those relationships. I think that's what sets this fraternity apart. And that's what will make this fraternity successful in the future.
Thank you, Jen. So you guys have both kind of touched on this in various ways, but when we talk about a member of a board of directors, which the International Executive Board is, what is your perspective on what role a member of the IEB should play as it relates to Phi Alpha Delta as a whole? And Jen, I'll start with you on this question.
Sure. I think that, it depends. I will tell you one thing is I think as a board member, we need to set the pace. I think you should lead by example. I think that is a big part of it. So the strategic plan, yes, I think that's important. And we set the plan and we have a lot of the members to implement it. But that doesn't mean as a board member, you cannot also be one of the catalysts for change or one of the catalysts behind doing that work. So as a member of the International Executive Board, first and foremost, I think that you have to be a leader. You have to lead by example, show that you represent our core values. Because if our members or newer members or even older members see these board members and they're not living by those core values, I think that sets a negative tone. I think it sets, it doesn't bring a sense of belonging. So I think that is first and foremost a board member's role, is to show and exemplify the core values of Phi Alpha Delta, lead by example, and then assist and lead, but not micromanage our key volunteers to reach those goals within not only the strategic plan, but within the organization as a whole.
Thank you, Jen. Connie, same question. If you need me to repeat it, I can.
Can you repeat, please? Thank you.
Absolutely. Now I have to remember exactly how I said it, but what is, as a member of the International Executive Board, what role do you believe an IEB member should play as it relates to the fraternity as a whole?
As a member of the IEB, I think it's important that even if you are a member of the IEB, you are still a member of the fraternity. And as a leader, it's important to make sure that you are listening to everybody. Maintaining active communication with your membership is part of your role in being an IEB member. And it's really an important part of the role as being International Vice Justice. Listening to your membership, listening to what their needs are, and listening to their feedback and incorporating it and trying to make sure that we are providing what our membership needs. Like I mentioned in my opening, from backpack to briefcase, or even briefcase to backpack. I mean, some jobs don't require you to have a briefcase. I think it's important to make sure that in those roles, that even in a leadership role, we are not using our skills to make sure that we are leading the fraternity forward. We are also showing that we are doing our best to execute our membership's innovative ideas on an international level.
Thank you, Connie. So I have heard y'all both talk about how you're still a member, even though you are on the International Executive Board, in this instance, potentially as the International Vice Justice. But talk to our members about the fiduciary duties that a board member owes to this organization that are different from the duty or duties that a member would owe to the fraternity. Connie, I'll start with you on this question.
I think what's different in terms of our fiduciary duties is making sure that we are looking at the financial aspects of the fraternity, because at the end of the day, that's something that we have to accept as a reality. Making sure that we are looking at our budget, what we need to change within the budget, what can we use funds for, and what are those funds going to be used for? And that's making sure that we are going to not only be accountable to, the fine people at the IRS, but it's also making sure that we are going to be accountable to our members. And I think that a really good example would be how well John has maintained our financial records in these past couple of bienniums and demonstrating that level of transparency. So even though we have a fiduciary duty to the fraternity, we also have to make sure that we are still doing our duty to our membership. And that includes maintaining transparency as much as we can.
Thank you, Connie. Jen, same question to you. Let me know if you need me to repeat it.
Yeah, can you repeat it again, Nicole?
Sure. I was just, the lead-in was that you both talked about how you're still a member of the fraternity, even though you serve on the International Executive Board, and in this instance, potentially as International Vice Justice. But how does your fiduciary duty as a board member differ from the duties that you would have as an individual member of the fraternity?
So I think Connie was correct with the fiduciary duty of making sure we manage finances correctly. But I think something above and beyond that, specifically as a board member, is a duty of confidentiality to certain issues that may come before the board. So certain things happen in executive session. And I think it's important that we maintain the integrity of that executive session And those things are in executive session for a reason, because when that duty is not maintained, I think it hurts us all, not only as a board, but also as a fraternity. So there's that. I also think it's important, you know, to have disclosure, right? So I think it's important to be knowledgeable and educated about every decision you make. I think that's most important as a board member, to make sure prior to voting on a specific issue that you have all the facts and resources, and to be able to have the courage to speak up when you don't have the necessary information to vote with that full array of knowledge. So those are two specifics where they differ from a board member and a regular member.
Thank you, Jen. All right. So you both have touched on and talked about, both in response to questions and as part of your opening, one or more of our core values. Of our core values, with which one are you most aligned and why? And for this question, I'm looking for one only. So Jen, I'll start with you on this question.
Sorry, I was muted. So I think it's very hard for me to choose one, but I think compassion is where I feel most aligned. And I think compassion, because it touches not just that core value, but I think it's all encompassing. It's important. We've talked a lot about listening, and that's a big part of compassion, and listening to people from all facets of life, all walks of life, and having compassion to understand where our differences are. That's where I think is most important to me.
Thank you, Jen. Connie, same question. Of our core values, with which one are you most aligned, and one only, and why?
For me personally, given my journey to getting on the IEB, or even my journey in the fraternity, I would say courage. When I first started doing more activities with Phi Alpha Delta, this is kind of a tough story to tell. Hopefully I can tell it very quickly. At the 2016 convention, I was verbally attacked by a member, and no one came to my aid. And I was asked by another person who was running for the IEB at the time to speak for them on the floor. But after being verbally attacked the night before, I did not feel comfortable coming back to convention. No one calmed me down. No one stood up for me. But I came back and I spoke on the convention floor. Again, I have also been courage. I have also exemplified courage when I ran for the IEB. And I had the courage with other fraternity members to say that the nominations and elections process was not clear. And we took that before the International Tribunal and were able to implement changes to make sure that everybody would have the chance to run for the IEB. That was not easy, and it was very scary to have to face leadership after documenting various instances of where the entire membership wasn't fully informed. I have also done, and I have taken a lot of tough stances on the IEB, especially to make sure that every single member's voice is heard. It takes a lot of courage to stand up to an entire board and tell them that what they are doing is not right and it is not okay. I have done that.
Thank you, Connie. All right. Next question actually is going to be an attendee question. So the question is, each candidate for IVJ has also served as international secretary. How will you use your role as IVJ to ensure the timely approval and communication of meeting minutes so all members are aware of board actions? And Connie, I will start with you on this question.
Thank you. So I know this has been definitely a topic of controversy, not just for my service as secretary, but also as past secretaries as well. And I think that this is where we're going to come up with an innovative solution on how to make sure that these minutes are going to be approved and also posted in a more timely manner. And I think part of that process is making sure that the international secretary has more ownership over the minutes. Currently, right now, when the secretary drafts the minutes, they are sent over to the higher ups, to the IJ, the executive office, and I'm not really sure what happens after that. I know there is review. I know that there is double checking. However, the process after it leaves the secretary's hands is what needs to be more transparent. Making sure the secretary is included in that process, or even shortening that process to make sure that the secretary can be accounting for where everything is at, and making sure that when we're going to send the edited minutes, not edited, the sending the minutes over to the International Executive Board, making sure that that vote is going to be done in a timely manner. And then once that vote is done, making sure that the secretary can post the minutes. So that way the secretary is part of every single, part of the process, and that there's going to be transparency. So if there is a holdup in the process somewhere, that the secretary can take the initiative to make sure that clog is going to be freed up so you can get the minutes done in an expeditious manner. But it also means making sure that upper leadership knows when the secretary is unable to fulfill their duties, and reaching out and making sure that they can help make sure that those minutes are going to continue to be done.
Thank you, Connie. Jen, same question. Let me know if you need me to repeat it. It's also in the Q&A if you want to see it there.
Yeah, I'm just looking at that. So, as an international secretary, and there's different processes under each IJ. During my time as international secretary, I would type the minutes and I would send them out to the board as a whole. I think that's important. I think that's part of the red tape, and I told you more substantive over procedure in my perspective. I think there's not a reason, my personal prerogative, not speaking for anybody else, there's not a reason to send it to one member of the board before sending it to the rest, because we were all present at the same meeting. We're all there. We all know what happened. So I don't think there's necessarily a reason to go through additional steps and filters. I think that's part of the issue, where if you break down the barriers between even just members of the IEB, because sometimes, as Connie said, the left hand might not know what the right hand's doing. And I think that's a shame, and that's important. And I think that is a result of having a lot of red tape and procedural things that are just not efficient. What I think is most effective and prudent is for whoever is secretary to do the minutes. When they do the minutes, send it out to the entire IEB as once. So as a secretary, it was my job to not only send out all of the email ballots, but collect those ballots, whether they be for councils or committees or minutes, and then give that to Andrew at the EO and said, hey, and then when all of those are voted on, make sure to follow up with Andrew, the executive office, and say, hey, these are ready to be posted. Here they are. Here are all of the reports that need to be attached to the back of the minutes. And then here are the executive session minutes, which are not to be published. And I think that's part of the role that we need to just have better training and one way of doing it instead of everybody changing it as each biennium.
Thank you, Jen. All right. So I think we have time for just one more question before we move to closing remarks. So if the IJ can no longer serve for any reason, you would automatically become the international justice. How would you rise to that occasion? Jen, you're up first.
I think that's a very complicated question, but I will try to answer it in a concise manner. I think that one, It depends on how that came to be. I think one, the IVJ and the IJ need to be on the same page and in constant communication, not only with the executive office, but also members of the board. So as an IVJ, if that were to happen, I would step in to fill the shoes of IJ. First, I would look at what has been done and what tasks are needed to be completed. So I know both members that are running for IJ are pretty organized, efficient, and I think Sister Winget said she has tasks list, and I firmly believe Brother Karasik does as well. So I would pick up to where they left off and say, okay, what are we doing? I would make sure to communicate and call members of the board individually, see if we can call a meeting and say, look, this is where we are. How can we pick up to where it's left off? And let's move forward to make it a seamless transition. I would call on our more experienced members, possibly members of the IAB, on their leadership and knowledge. I think it's important to stand on the shoulders of those who came before us, and listen to their wisdom, because this is something like this has absolutely probably happened before. And if you step forward and then you say, okay, let's look at what happened before, let's look at where we're going, where are we at now, and let's move forward, pick it up and move forward and just get the work done that needs to get done in an organized, efficient, and fraternal manner.
Thank you, Jen. Connie, same question, and let me know if you need me to repeat it.
No, that's okay. Thank you. I think we have to do, once we step into the role of IJ, it would just be continuing the work. And that's also something that's going to be important for the international justice to make sure happens. So that's where the international vice justice and international justice will have to work together to make sure that if something does happen, that the work will continue. And I remember my first convention back in 2013. I remember Brother Derek Hill talking about how there needs to be a continuation of leadership and that there needs to be sort of like a legacy of leadership and making sure that there is something there. There's something concrete and there's something that we can continue to follow to make sure that that leadership and those goals are going to be continuous. And I have that ingrained in my head and I have used it a lot, not only just in my student leadership, but also in how I take my approach in my professional life as well. So if I were to ever leave, then the next person can take on my portfolio pretty well caught up on what's going on. And I think that that's something that the International Vice Justice and International Justice are going to have to do together, is making sure that if something were to happen, to making sure we have something in place that we can continue the work, but also, as Nicole Winget likes to say, Semper Gumby, making sure that we have enough flexibility to make sure that the fraternity will continue moving forward.
Thank you, Connie. Thank you, Jen. All right, so we have reached the closing remarks section. As a reminder, you each have 3 minutes. Since Jen gave her opening remarks first, Connie, I'm going to ask you to give your closing remarks first, and then Jen will conclude us this evening. So whenever you're ready.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all for your questions and listening to why I want to serve as your International Vice Justice for the upcoming biennium. As I have mentioned in my candidate statement, Facebook posts, and my interactions with you, I want us to move this fraternity forward into the future. But what does the future hold for Phi Alpha Delta? To me, that means ensuring our diverse membership is represented at every level of leadership. It means collaborating with our members and other organizations to innovate our professional programs and continuing our service to the student. It means having the courage to come to terms with our history and working together to make sure exclusion no longer occurs. To me, it means being in the service of you, the member. People of great passion can make the impossible happen. Together, let's make the impossible happen.
Thank you, Sister Connie. Sister Jen, whenever you're ready, your 3 minutes will begin.
Thank you. I would like to thank all of you for listening to this forum, for coming here today. And again, thank you, Sister Greta, for moderating the forum, and Sister Connie for being present for this forum as well. I would like to thank again the nominations committee. I am the candidate best suited for the IVJ position. I've talked to you tonight, and I have talked in my statement as well as one-on-one conversations with you about my goals for this biennium. I have the ability, the knowledge, and the passion to be your international vice justice. Again, I want to empower our volunteers and bring back that fraternalism. As I have said time and time again, I think fraternalism and getting the business of the fraternity completed are not mutually exclusive. And that is the way that we move forward. Finally, I think it's important, and it has been touched on by both nominees for IJ, is the importance of our law school chapters. I think that this next biennium is key and of vital importance to make sure we address the dip in law student membership. And my hope is to support the IJ and the rest of the board and our key volunteers in focusing on chapter operations and on bringing back the fraternal to our fraternity. Thank you.
Thank you both so much. It's been my privilege to serve as your moderator tonight. I'm so appreciative of each of you being willing, as well as Sister Winget and Brother Karasik being willing to run for these two vital positions on our International Executive Board. Thank you to each one of our attendees who has stuck with us throughout this evening's candidate forum. As a reminder, we do have some additional candidate forums coming up this week. So if you didn't yet register for them, please refer to the email that went out on Friday with the link to register. It does require a separate registration from this evening's. Again, these recordings will be processed by the executive office and posted on our YouTube channels. Thank you for the sibling who suggested that we also post within those a link to the strategic plan website. So we will certainly do that so members have a full opportunity to be informed. Additionally, I hope that you will all plan to join us at Convention Assembled. I can't get in front of a group of sisters, siblings, and brothers and not put in a plug for convention. But most importantly, I hope that you will share this candidate forum recording when it's available with those members who are not able to be with us here this evening so that they can cast an informed vote. I'm confident that no matter who is elected to the International Justice or the International Vice Justice position, we will be able to move forward together. And I'm so excited to see what will come. So with that, I will bid you a good evening and hopefully see some of you the rest of this week. Thank you and good night.